Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to unravel a real puzzle, one that gets right to the heart of modern South Korea. How can a nation with a 5,000-year history have a democracy that's barely 30 years old? Let's get into it. Okay, so let's just dive right into this. It sounds like a paradox, doesn't it? On one hand, you've got this incredibly ancient culture, and on the other, a stable institutional democracy that really only got its footing in the 1990s. This tension is what defines so much of South Korea today. To really get a handle on it, you have to think of the country's story as running on two different clocks, at two completely different speeds. One history is ancient, long, and steady. The other is modern, chaotic, and just moving at absolute lightning speed. So, first things first, let's set the stage. We need to wind the clock way, way back and look at Korea's deep, independent past. This is the foundation that everything else, all the drama and change, is built on. For literally thousands of years, the Korean Peninsula was home to these powerful, independent kingdoms. From the legendary founding of Gojoseon to the intense rivalries of the Three Kingdoms period, this was a place that really carved out its own unique path, very distinct from its powerful neighbors. And here's something really interesting the source material points out about the Goryeo period. This was no hermit kingdom. It saw itself as an empire, a son of heaven, and it conducted this really masterful, multifaceted diplomacy with all the major players in the region. It was confident. But then, something happened. A huge shift that would completely alter the course of Korean history, and really set the stage for all the challenges of the modern era. And wow, this slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? When the new Joseon dynasty took over, it needed legitimacy, and so it became super reliant on Ming China. All that confident, outward-looking diplomacy of Goryeo, it was replaced by a posture that looked inward, focusing almost entirely on just one powerful neighbor. And that had massive consequences down the line. And this is the key takeaway here, right? This long stretch of relative isolation, of focusing on just one relationship, it made the nation vulnerable. It just wasn't prepared when the whole world order started to shift with the arrival of Western powers and a rapidly modernizing Japan. And that vulnerability, well, it had a tragic result: the loss of national sovereignty and a period of incredible hardship under colonial rule. It's a trauma that, honestly, still echoes in Korea today. Okay, so let's fast forward to the 20th century, because this is where the story goes into absolute overdrive. We're talking about incredible speed and, at the same time, deep, deep trauma. I mean, just look at this timeline. Right after liberation from Japan, Korea is thrown headfirst into the Cold War. That leads to a devastating proxy war, the division of the peninsula that's still there today, and then decades of authoritarian military rule. It was just boom, 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 one crisis right after another. This nonstop turmoil basically forced South Korea to cram what should have been centuries of change into just a few short decades. There's actually a term for this: compressed modernity. It's like hitting fast forward on the Industrial Revolution and the birth of democracy all at the same time. The pressure on society was just immense. And to give you some perspective, back in 1960, South Korea's GDP per capita was just $80. I mean, just let that number sink in for a second. $80. It was one of the poorest countries on the entire planet. And just over 60 years later, that number has skyrocketed to around $35,000. That is an economic transformation so fast and so complete, they call it the miracle on the Han River. You just don't see that happen. But, and this is a huge but, this incredible growth didn't just happen in a vacuum. It was pushed through by authoritarian regimes that put economic development way ahead of political freedom. And that creates the fast part of our two-speed paradox. So while the economy was on this rocket ship, political freedom was on a much slower, much tougher path. A path that wasn't paved by governments, but was forged by the people themselves, often in the streets. See, the thing is, the actual institutions of democracy are still really new. And while people are incredibly engaged in politics, which is a fantastic asset, the source points out that the culture of compromise and public responsibility, well, it's still playing catch-up to all that passion. You can almost see this whole struggle reflected right there in the nation's flag. That central symbol, the taejuk, it represents the search for balance and harmony between powerful opposing forces, kind of like its super fast economic growth and its much slower journey towards civic maturity. Which brings us right back to the core challenge facing South Korea today. How do you get those two different historical clocks, the fast one and the slow one, to finally sync up?
So what the source material argues is that the next big project for Korea isn't just about building more wealth. It's about building a mature, stable, democratic culture that actually matches its status as a global economic powerhouse.
So what's it all boiled down to? Well, that passionate, participatory energy of the Korean people is an incredible democratic engine. The challenge now is to channel all that energy into a stable, responsible, and truly deliberative culture. How they answer that question, well, that's going to write the next chapter for this ancient nation and its incredibly young, incredibly vibrant democracy.